had against Florida. Describe how different the program is now than when you were playing against them.
So my few years against Kentucky was also on a little bit of a hot streak. They were pretty good several of those years. I think even a few of them they might have gotten even to top 10. I think even there was a chance game day might have been at one of those games when I was there at their place. But also in 07, when we had a close game and beat them there, that's the same year they upset LSU. So they had some good teams, but I think the difference, and I remember last week at Kentucky talking to Coach Stoops, I asked him a question: how do you go from a team that wants to win and hopes to win to when you step on the field you believe you're going to win? And I think that's something that an Alabama has had for years. It doesn't matter what game, national championship, they believe they're going to win. And I think Kentucky is building that, and they're so much further along than they have been. Last week I really thought the old Kentucky, this was a team where you got a big win against the Florida, and then last week could have been a letdown, and it wasn't. They went out there and dominated all phases of the game. And now you set up to even a bigger game where you have a chance to possibly knock off the #1 team in the country at home, and people wouldn't think, oh, that's far-fetched to even think it. You have a team that I think is very consistent, and I think they play very fundamentally sound. I don't know that they're as gifted top to bottom as some of the other teams in the league, but they can get away with that because how well they're coached, how well they execute, and they just do their job so well. And I think that's the sign of a program that's changing, a culture that's changing, but also a coaching staff that is getting buy-in from their players, which is as important as anything.
Often the past couple of years, Georgia's been right on that cusp, and this could be the year, and then they have a letdown game. What makes this team different? Getting the #1 ranking, getting the hype from
We'll see if they are. I don't think they've played necessarily that big game yet that they're going to have to get over the hump. I do think that this defense is as special maybe as they've had in a long time. I think, 17 they went to? That was a really good defense. That team probably had a few more playmakers on offense than this one does right now. But some of those young guys are stepping up. I think they're finding more of their identity. Because I think there's going to be a game at some point this year, whether that's against Florida, it's the SEC championship, it's in the playoff, where it's not going to go their way. And every game so far this year, they've been playing it on their terms. What happens when it's not on their terms? So when maybe they get behind, a big play happens, and they got to play from behind, they got to change a little bit. That's what I'm intrigued to see. But man, you talk about a team that flies around, plays extremely physical in a day where it's hard to be physical, and just executes. I mean, can't say enough about Stetson, the way he stepped up and played, execute at a very high level. I love their game plans every week. Slightly different, but take advantage of a little bit different against Arkansas than Auburn and Clemson. And so, I mean, what Kirby's doing it's really special.
Tim, I wanted to ask about Stetson. What do you think just made him so successful, and do you think that Georgia should start to look to use him in the run game?
In the big games, yeah.
In the run game.
In the big games, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
I wouldn't. This one, yes. Florida, yes. When it gets close, yes. He's someone who's had some injury issues, right? And so I think you want to be smart. But I think even last week you saw it be a difference maker early. His athleticism, and I think that's something they can add. And even when JT comes back, is that something that you keep as an option? He's just executing at such a high level that. And just looks like he's got really good chemistry. So, he's playing himself maybe into more playing time.
You've obviously had a lot of experience playing against Georgia defense. Over the last decade, how has Georgia's defense changed from a size and personnel standpoint?
Well, I think they've changed as the game's changed. I think they've continued to get faster, but the one thing that Georgia has done is they continue to stay really big. And it's hard to out-physical this team. I don't know if there's anybody in the country that is as physical, offense, defense, special teams as Georgia. And I think that's one of their MOs when you look. I don't see another team that can push them around. And I want to see another team that can match them physically. And that's going to be, I think, one of the fascinating battles this week. Is Kentucky's a pretty physical team. I think their defensive line does a pretty good job of winning at the point of attack. I think that's going to be a really intriguing matchup, because if they don't, it'll be a pretty easy Georgia win. But if they can match it, right, where it doesn't mean you have to win it, but you can't give up 5-7 yards a chunk. That's just demoralizing, and just it's a slow, methodical beatdown, and that's worse than somebody hitting a big play. And I'm intrigued to see what happens with that, because I think Kentucky does a pretty good job at the point of attack. That'll be really fun to see. So I think that's one of the things that hasn't changed for them, is they continue to stay really big and physical. But I also think they've adjusted a little bit to spread teams and continue to figure out, before it was so much of the Bama combo coverage that Kirby has done for a long time, but now they got some other wrinkles in there that I really like against spread teams.
Kind of talk about the play of Kentucky's offensive line this year. They're probably one of the best unit that Georgia's defensive line will face.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's physicality, but I think it's also playing together, and then I think it's scheme. All of those things match up to really help this offensive line. I think they do a great job of working together on combos, on double teams. You could see that the way they're coached, it's very in sync. And I know we talk about it, it's very hard to do, execute that at a high level. It's going to be a lot harder this week too, because they haven't gone against anybody like this defensive line. So that's going to be really, really fun to see. And if they can't run the ball, what does Kentucky go to? Which has been everybody's problem against Georgia.
One more, guys.
Tim, so Georgia's set to get a bunch of receivers back, Don Blaylock, Jamenberg, and maybe even George Pickens down the line. How hard is it for as a quarterback, chemistry-wise, to get those guys back in sync, get that chemistry back on track?
I think if you have experience in the past with those guys, it really helps. But honestly, it's really hard in third and longs, fourth downs, red zone, big situations to make up for that just feel that you have with somebody. And so, yeah, you think you have it, right? You think you have it when you hit a slant on 1st and 10, but it's in the big moments, in the pressure packed, when every inch counts. Now, what's the difference? I think that's where that could come into play. It's just off, but just off against the better teams, you don't get another shot. I think that's where it's really important for them to get more guys back. And honestly, I don't know if it's getting guys back or just keep developing these younger guys. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to be better. Some really gifted athletically that, by the end of the year, they're going to have a lot of experience in them. So I think that's going to play in really big too.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.